And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Montefalco. Welcome to Montefalco from myself, Filippo Bartolotta, grape trotter. So I'm a food and wine journalist. I taste a few thousand wines a year. A lot of the wines that I've been tasting in the past 5 years actually have been here in Montefalco. Beautiful hilltop village around 450, more or less, meters above sea level. We are in Umbria. A couple of hours drive from Florence and from north, and a couple of hours drive from Rome south. We are in a land which is famous for being the San Francisco's land. So San Francesco was born here in the area. Apparently, the grape variety that Montefalco is famous for, the Sagrantino, was brought over from one of his journey. And the name of Sagrantino in the past was Itriola. What kind of land is this? This is a beautiful, smooth hilltop, rolling hills with an incredible continental kind of climate. Very different diversity. Tonight we'll be having 9 winemakers. I'll introduce them to you in a moment. Going for 4 different Montefalco Rosso, and then 4 Sagrantino di Montefalco, and the last wine will be the Passito. So a great opportunity to go through very different wines, which are not just different for the fact that, as a general rule, the Rosso di Montefalco is based on Sangiovese. So we'll see with the winemakers the different, somebody's using Merlot and Sagrantino, somebody else would be using even Barbera, for instance, or other varieties. What is very interesting is that if you were to drive your car as we speak, as I've done it today from the north of Tuscany, coming down here, you'll be seeing the grapes beautifully. The veraison has happened, of course. Some of the grapes have been harvested, so the whites are in the house. The Merlot, they are about to start. Sangiovese is almost ready. Sagrantino, on the other hand, will be ready in almost a month's time. This is one of the most interesting conversations that I had with our winemakers earlier on during dinner. Why am I kicking off our tasting with this? Because on a given vintage, if you kick off with the ripening momentum is 30 days later. So imagining flower set and fruit set. And maybe there is going to be some frost damage taking place with the Sangiovese and maybe the Merlot. On the other hand, Sagrantino is not exposed to the risk of frost, rather than for the mildew. As maturation goes on, very interestingly, we get to this point, this time of the year, where most people are harvesting the Sangiovese or about to harvest Sangiovese, and Sagrantino is not ready yet. So Sagrantino, the bubble factor, so the alcohol content, is almost ready for the grapes to be harvested. What's going to happen in a month's time, if you've been having a hot vintage, Sagrantino actually is not going to go super crazy with the alcohol because we are entering the fall season. So the rains are going to help Sagrantino, even in some occasions, to reduce the alcohol content. So wonderful situation, and very difficult to talk about the same vintage for the Rosso and the Sagrantino, but we'll find out more about it because we're going to be having a lot of different wines. We start with the Rosso 2012 with Liu Pambuffetti of Scacciadiavoli. It'd be interesting. Let me grab my glass. So I'll be with you in this tasting. Let me introduce you to Liu. Here we are, Liu. 2012, so we're kicking off with the oldest Rosso that we have in the panel tonight. Tell us a little bit about Scacciadiavoli and your idea of Rosso di Montefalco.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Liu Pambuffetti from Scacciadiavoli Winery. Here we have 2012. Actually, is the current vintage in the United States. It was also here in Italy. So means that we age Montefalco Rosso at least 2 years and a half. Montefalco Rosso is made with Sangiovese 60%, 25% Merlot, 15% Sagrantino, according the law, the disciplinary that is going to change in 2016. Our idea of Montefalco Rosso is to have a very balanced wine, aged in oak for 1 year, so a wine that can also age very well. Tonight we tasted one 2005 Montefalco Rosso that was still very, very fresh. So actually Montefalco Rosso has a good potential, not like Sagrantino, but can be very complex, structured, balanced, elegant, and can age at least 10 years, in my opinion. 2012 vintage was quite warm. We had a dry spring and summer, so the quality, the health of the grape was very good, but we had a low production and a big concentration. That's why we have a 14.5 degrees of alcohol.
14.5 in alcohol, which of course is quite a lot, but it's, I find, I don't know if you agree with me on this one, I find the wine very crunchy red fruit, so it's all played in this idea of something that is relatively vibrant. There's no over density in the wine. Of course it's alcoholic, but all in all, I find the wine doesn't have much of an alcohol bite. So I think it's a great food companion. The acidity is pretty high, the fruit is crunchy, and the wine is delivering some quite interesting. In most of the reds, or most of the Rosso di Montefalco, I got these beautiful pepper notes, some green pepper, black pepper, but there is a bit of a spiciness that is making the wine quite gastronomic. So quite interesting. What about the aging? Did you already touch based on the aging?
Yes, we ferment separately the three grape. After we blend and we age for 1 year in oak that before was used for Sagrantino, so it's not new oak. After we stock for at least 6 months, 1 year in the stainless steel, we bottle and we can keep in the bottle a long time. Minimum, we keep 3 months in the bottle before to start selling this wine.
Okay, 3 months in the bottle. Now, I'm trying to see, yes, there is 9 winemakers around the tables tonight. Normal wine, just to answer a few questions over there. Montefalco Rosso, looking forward to the tasting. We are 2, all of them, talk to Vino. Wine do you look forward to tasting? Okay, so let's move on with Caprai, Liu, and maybe we're gonna come back with you. Of course, everybody, please answer as many questions as you want. These winemakers are eager to answer your questions, myself as well. We are going to, with Eleonora, with Arnaldo Caprai. Eleonora, maybe we're gonna move vintage of 1 year, so maybe you can tell us the difference between the 12 and the 13 vintage on one hand. The wine here tends to be a little smoother, a rounder type of wine. I think this was quite a balanced vintage. Eleonora, what do you think about the Montefalco Rosso on this year, and what is the approach for Arnaldo Caprai? What kind of target? When do you think, in what occasions would you drink this wine?
Hello everybody, I'm Eleonora. I work for Arnaldo Caprai. Yeah. What Filippo said is perfect, because 2013 is so far and different from 2012. In particular, this vintage, to me and to most of the critics, because just today I read again Wine Spectator, Wine Advocate, James Sackling reviews on this wine again, because in Italy now we sell 2014, so I just look it up again. And I mean, the key words that all the reviews had is fresh and clean. So to me, that's the main idea of this wine. So Montefalco Rosso 2013 is really ready to drink. And, you know, basically the best pairing is food, for sure. Cured meat, cheeses, but I really love this wine just to use it as an aperitif wine. So something really fresh, easy, and drinkable. And basically that's the main idea of Montefalco Rosso from Arnaldo Caprai. So We have basically Sangiovese. So Sangiovese from Umbria is pretty far from Tuscany for sure, but the Sagrantino really makes a difference, even it's only 15%. In this blend, we have also some Merlot, just to keep the wine really fresh and drinkable. So that's the main idea of this production, because for sure Sagrantino, as Liu said, has a really long aging potential, and also Montefalco Rosso has a beautiful aging potential too, but our idea is to have like an everyday wine. So that's what we think about this wine. So.
And so far, but I think it's going to be the case for most of the reds, most of the Rosso, I like the idea here that the oak presence is very mild. Okay, there is not toastiness, over the top extraction, oaky spices. So this is all about the fruit, with a different approach, with a more crunchy on one hand so far, and a relatively smoother kind of fruit here. But the idea is a very gastronomic wine. What kind of prices, I forgot to ask. Liu, what is the price of your Rosso di Montefalco on the shelf? And then I will ask the same question to Eleonora, of course.
Montefalco Rosso is around $20 on the shelves.
Our wine too is around $22. So.
$22. Okay.
It's kind of, easy.
Yeah, so it's an approachable wine.
Easy to understand Umbria, no? And the style of Umbrian wines in an easy way. So.
I agree, and of course the presence of other varieties to blend out the importance, the structure, the architecture of Sagrantino di Montefalco actually is a help for an everyday drinking. Which is, what would you drink? What would you eat with this wine?
For sure, I said before, the classical cured meat and cheeses, mild matured, but it is perfect with any type of pasta, and why not just to have a good red or glass of wine, without any food. So
without any food.
Yeah.
Okay, dangerous proposal. Let's move on. Staying still with the Rosso, introducing you to Giampaolo Tabarrini. In this case, we're keeping the vintage, so we are 2013, but very different. Let me get my glass. Very different. Giampaolo, what is the blend of your wine?
Yeah, you are right. It's different from the wine you had previously because we had Barbera. Instead Merlot or Cabernet. We use all indigenous grapes. I believe that Sangiovese and Barbera, it's a perfect wedding. If we think a moment to the futures of single variety, single grapes, we immediately get it, we catch it. Sangiovese is very light in color. Barbera is rich, very dark. Sangiovese have a low acidity. Barbera used to have a very high acidity. Sangiovese is smooth, is elegant. Barbera is fruity, is fresh, is crispy. So when you blend each other, those two varieties help so much each other that the wine grows up in the smell, in the color, in the freshness. And the final touch is the Sagrantino. The Sagrantino, I used to say all the time, if the Barbera is the wife and the Sangiovese is the male inside this kind of family. Sagrantino, in this case, is like the young kids that comes up after the wedding and is the one that disturb, make noise because
like you,
exactly,
just like you,
exactly, because it's more aggressive, it's full of energy with the tannin. So. The Sagrantino on the Montefalco Rosso is at the end just the final touch. So we had the pleasure of the Sangiovese and the fruity and the sweetness of the Barbera just on the beginning. And when those two varieties goes away on the mouth, the tannins and the body and the dryness of the Sagrantino comes out and make this wine very interesting because it's not one way, change on the mouth. So, well, anyway, this is my way to think the wine, and this is what I like, so I hope that it's the same for everybody.
Sounds like you like what you make.
But that's for sure.
Which is already a good step. But in terms of size, I saw there's a question. We're starting from 35 hectares more or less with Schiaccia Diavoli. Arnaldo Caprai with 130, more or less. How many hectares do you own?
16.
16 hectares. You started off the business in 1996.
Yeah, this is a very long story. Well,
Don't keep us here.
No, I
we
can take
1 hour for the whole group.
No, okay, yes, I got the company in 1996. That's very short.
Okay.
That's the end of the story.
Coming back in the glass. So from the winemakers into the glass.
Yeah.
The first couple of glasses were all about the red fruit. We talked about them. Here, the color is already like even from the distance. There is more of a deep purple, which that's the Barbera,
It is.
giving that kind of color.
It is.
There is
the
more.
Barbera and the Sagrantino that of course rise up the color of Sangiovese, you know it.
So different approach, different idea. This is a more dense. There is more density. There is relatively more extraction. Nonetheless, keeping freshness in the wine. Could this be, because this is a 2013, it's 1.5 years of aging in the oak.
Yep.
Could this wine be considered like a Riserva? And why is it not a Riserva?
Well, we never did Riserva. And we always produce Montefalco Rosso such way, like used to be in the family in the past. So Riserva for me is just the Rosso. The Rosso should be a Riserva. I don't want to make two different Rosso. I don't want to have an entry-level wine. For me, Rosso is a serious wine. If you think that the Rosso is the wine that the winemaker drink daily, and we used to pair this wine with our own food. In Umbria, we don't have soft food. We eat a lot of meat, from the wild boar to the cows, pigs, whatever, chicken, fowl. Everything is possible to hunt. We hunt it. Also, if it's illegal, we eat it. So our food is very full body food. So we need of a daily wine that is able anyway to be paired and match with the daily food. So Montefalco Rosso should be a rich, full body wine. At the same time, should be a very ageable wine.
Perfect. So different style. Still the idea of producing something that can be actually drunk relatively easy. Let's see. How much is it on the shelves in the US?
Well, that is depending mostly from the state, because you know every state have a different markup, also for taxes and so on. Think a moment to New York and Mid-State and California. So anyway, can start on the shelf. On the shelf. 28, 27.
28, 27.
Yeah, well, think a moment that by the glass is in New York is $35. So means that it's on the shelf around 28.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Let's carry on. We're still for the you people over in the USA. We're still in the Rosso di Montefalco. We're now with Giampiero from Broccatelli Galli, and we're moving on of 1 year. So from the 2013 vintage, we're going to 2014. Giampiero, a little bit about your wine, which once again, we're moving from an older to a younger vintage. Although I believe in terms of a tasting sequence, this should have been together maybe at the beginning because of the light red berry crush, very active acidity in the wine, so really food wine. Is this your idea about Rosso di Montefalco, and how was 2014?
Hello everybody, my name is Galli Giampiero from Broccatelli Galli. I would like to explain at the beginning something about our winery.
Sure.
Very little time. Broccatelli Galli was born in 1951 from two families, Galli and Broccatelli. Galli was my uncle and my grandfather, sorry, and Broccatelli is my uncle that work actually in our winery, 85 years. And when we start, we buy in 87 the first vineyards in Torgiano area. Actually, we have 50 hectares in Torgiano and 25 in Montefalco. And we produce the two dioceses from Umbria region. About our Rosso di Montefalco, our opinion about Rosso di Montefalco, first of all, we present the 2014, because for us in this period we had a lot of changement inside our winery, and we spent a lot of money in technology and in vineyards too, and we changed the mentality of our winery. And actually, our Rosso di Montefalco is our expression, like to very light fruit, not so much wood. We think that this kind of wine must be the wine very drinkable and simple to
easy to drink,
yes.
easy to drink,
Yes.
and you have it. And the blend, if I get it correctly, you have a Sangiovese for a 70%,
70%,
Merlot 15,
15,
Sagrantino 15.
Perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
Once again, we're back in the idea of basically no oak, if not for a few months in some small barrels you mentioned, right?
Our 2014 make 12 in stainless steel.
Okay.
Only 3 months in barrique, not new, second passage, and then we make three months before, minimum 3 months before to sell.
Perfect. Acreage, we are around 25 hectares here in the Montefalco area, plus in total you have around 50 hectares, the whole Brocatelli Galli estate, right?
75, because we have 50 in Torgiamare and 25 in Montefalco.
75 hectares in total.
In total, yeah.
One last thing to remember is the retail price. We are about the $18, if I remember correctly.
18, 20, it depends to the state.
Yeah, of course.
Around, yes,
so
of
another
course.
wine for $18, $20. Once again, we're wrapping up the Rosso di Montefalco round. So if you have any questions about the Rosso, this is the time to ask. Maybe somebody mentioned about the new appellation system that is changing. I'm gonna ask very quickly Filippo Antonelli, what is gonna change? Can you just say, like, really in 2 minutes, what is the basic elements of the appellation as it is now, and how is it gonna be in the new appellation? The major difference.
Yeah, so for Montefalco Rosso now, the percentage is Sangiovese minimum 60%, maximum 70%, and now with the new appellation is up to 80% Sangiovese.
Okay.
Sagrantino now was minimum 10, maximum 15. Now the maximum is 25%. And other red grapes, they are still, it can be 0 to 30 now. Before it was 15, 30. So now, if you want, you can do Montefalco Rosso just from Sangiovese and Sagrantino without using anything else. This is for Montefalco Rosso. And then we have introduced the Montefalco Grecchetto, which was not existing in the appellation, so pure Grecchetto. And then we have changed the Montefalco Bianco. Before it was mostly Grecchetto in the blend, and now it's mostly Trebbiano Spoletino. These are the main changes.
Very interesting Trebbiano Spoletino. In the young and the older versions, incredible bottles can be found in the market. Well, thank you very much for the information. You were very clear. So basically, so far, the difference is going to be there's going to be more Sangiovese potentially that can go in the blend, and above all, the presence of more Sagrantino potentially that can go into the blend of the Rosso di Montefalco. Now, Rosso di Montefalco is the world that we just see now with these 4 winemakers. So we're gonna cut a line here and move on into the world of Sagrantino di Montefalco. Here we go. We start with Colpetrone. We kick off with a 2006 vintage. So Marco, I tried the wines earlier on. You can see it in the glass. Colpetrone has got this tar, almost like I'm not going to mention the name of another appellation that reminds me of, with the famous tar and roses. But it's a very extractive, very powerful wine with a lot of density. The tannins are really, you can almost chew the tannins in this wine, despite the year. So these wines seem to be really never ending. Why did you bring here a 2006 vintage? And by the way, classic vintage. It was a great vintage, right?
Right, it is. Ciao, and pleased to virtually meet you. And you are right, Filippo, because when we start producing our wines in Colpetrone, we had the opportunity to produce both, of course, Rosso and Sagrantino, and of course Sagrantino Passito. By our policy, we decided to produce only red wines. We don't have any other appellation different from Montefalco Rosso and Montefalco Sagrantino. In the case of gold, when we started our production, in the first vintage ever was 2004.
Yeah.
The idea, according to the market, was to give to people the opportunity to test both a young Sagrantino, which is our regular Sagrantino, and a different, completely different Sagrantino, not only for a selection in vineyard, because gold is the result of two specific vineyard selection.
Yeah.
In San Marco and in Santa Maria del Fico. But the other difference is the decision to leave aging more this wine.
Okay.
This is actually the vintage we have in the United States. But we have at the same time the current vintage of the regular.
Of the regular Sagrantino.
2010. So we decided to really give the opportunity to show the potential, because we always talk about the potential of Sagrantino, This is, in my opinion, because for me, it's of course ready. The vintage was wonderful. 2006 will be always in my heart, because I started working in 2006 for Colpetrone, so I will always say wonderful thing about 2006.
Oh, no wonder. You could work for it. You know, you could work for the cellar if you want.
Okay.
You'd be a nice ambassador. No, Marco, thank you very much. While I'm listening to you about the blend of the two different vineyards, the idea of do the gold selection and to introduce to the market an older Sagrantino, this is actually a subject that was at the table while we were having dinner with all the winemakers. Some of them were saying, man, we should really put in the market some older Sagrantinos, because that's when Sagrantino is actually showing the true potential. And I have to be honest, this is one factor that is very intriguing. Opening a lot of old bottles of Sagrantino, I actually have realized how this wine is gonna show a lot of his luscious, and the density becomes a little more elegant, the tannins smooth out. But there is another factor that now that I taste the wine, we opened the bottles roughly a couple of hours ago for dinner, and I found a wine that was kind of almost overripe. Okay, I'll be honest here. Overripe, the fruit was quite stewed, and the tannin was quite aggressive. Now it's a different wine. So one other element, when you open a bottle of Sagrantino, my opinion, and then I would like to pick the winemaker's brain, is do be a little aggressive with the young Sagrantino. You can decant the wine, double decant the wine, use the big glasses. This wine doesn't fear anything. And as a matter of fact, the wine would be very thankful. It's gonna smooth out, it's gonna deliver more aromas, more aromatics. Now I can get the menthol, the more balsamic elements that are coming off the nose of the Sagrantino, and the kind of like a little bit over the top ripe fruit that was at the beginning is fading away. So would you, maybe we can ask Daniele so that we can move on to another winemaker. And I know that time, we have a very short period of time. If any winemaker wants to chip in, please do. What do you think, Daniele? Is that an idea? I mean, to open the wine, to decant the wine, and maybe to wait a little bit before drinking Sagrantino. What is your point of view?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniele. So I think Sagrantino needs to be opened, especially that type of Sagrantino, quite a time before, because this is a big wine. So I'm talking about Colpetrone Gold because you know that's a reserve wine.
Yeah.
So compared to the wine that we are presenting today, it's a 2010. It's a different style of Sagrantino. So for example, we used to produce a reserve 10 years old before to release on the market. So it's very close to the Colpetrone Gold.
Yeah.
And you cannot compare the two Sagrantino, I believe. So my point is, depending to the vintage, depending to the type of aging, because you can never say, so any vintage for the Sagrantino is the same, any aging it's the same. So maybe you have a very strong vintage, maybe 2006 was or 2005.
Sure.
And when you open, you're right, when you open that bottle before, probably it was too big, no?
It was,
Yeah,
yes.
overripened. Yeah, I believe you. But that's normally because when you make a reserve wine, you have the sensation. Otherwise, you have to go in at entry level. Entry level. When we are talking about Sagrantino, it's very hard to talk about entry level because you have just few production for that. So,
coming to you, Daniele, and Terre della Custodia,
Yes.
can you tell us a wee bit more about size of the winery, maybe location in the map, where is it, and the approach in how many years and what kind of technique do you use to age the wine, in a nutshell?
So our winery is in the southern western part of the appellation. All our wines are southern exposed, and
Hectares?
hectares. Totally, we have 152 hectares divided in 7 blocks because we also have other vines in different appellation close to Todi area.
Okay.
In the Montefalco, we have 2 different sides from the hill, eastern and western side.
Okay.
Normally, Sagrantino comes just from the western side, southern exposure, and the vines are from 96. They are 20 years old.
Okay.
So the wine that we are presenting is completely different than Colpetrone because I told you we
Yeah.
also have a reserve. So this is a much drinkability
Yeah, it's
wine.
leaner, doesn't have as much
Absolutely.
of the extraction, of
Absolutely.
course.
Of course, yeah.
How
Wine is
many
very-
years in the oak, and what kind of
it
oak?
stays, it depends. Normally, basically, it is 12 months divided from new French barrels, old French barrels, and 50% on Italian barrels.
Okay.
That's the usual blending. So you have much more drinkability. It's just 14.5% in alcohol. And I believe 2010 is a very calibrated vintage.
Yes, it is.
Because it's not so powerful like 2009 or 2011 is. So this is much more comparable. So before you say it, sometimes I find a lot of connection with Barolo. Maybe in this wine you have.
I didn't say that,
yeah,
though.
because you can still feeling tannins for a long time.
Yes.
Okay. Probably we will be very old because we are baby now. You
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Of course we
Yeah,
are.
We are 14, right? Okay. And I think we will be. Very, very interesting to drink it in 10 years at least, but I think 15 years.
Aging potential. Now, one last question.
Yeah.
Price and importer, please.
Yeah, importer overall in West Coast, California, and the average price I know is around $45.
$45. Actually, I have to come back to Marco for a second. Can you give us that answer as well? Your importer and the retail price of your 2006 Colpetrone.
Okay. BS import and the retail price, the average retail price is
$58. Okay, thank you guys. We'll come back if there is any more questions. I'm gonna move on the other side of the room in this 13th century palazzo. So we're having a tasting in an 800 years old building. And I'll ask Luca from Castelbuono. I love to introduce this winery for the beauty, because there is an installation by Pomodoro, one of the greatest contemporary artists. And I have tasted your 2011, Luca. And there's a question that actually is for all the winemakers. It's about, can winemakers profile Sagrantino, finicky, late ripening, loose, dense cluster, thick skin, etc.? Can you answer this question?
Yes. Hello to everybody. My name is Luca, and I'm from Tenute Lunelli and the Tenuta Castelbuono winery. Yes, we work in a very nice place because Carapace is a very artistic place, but we work very strong because Sagrantino it's a very strong varieties for cultivated and it's very very interesting. I think one of the most interesting red indigenous varieties in Italy.
Yep.
Tonight we taste 2010, and 2010, for example, it was a pretty cold winter, and after the summer it was very fresh until mid-August, and after lots of high temperature and sunny September and October.
Yeah.
And we have obtained a really full body wine, but not too much tannin, and a very elegant wine for fruity, for deep sensation, and yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, what I like about this vintage is the classic elements of an important wine with the structured tannins, but at the same time you have the sweetness of the fruit that is delivered quite nicely. So the wine is in good balance. Oak presence, actually I find the wine quite mild. I see that it's quite elegant, right?
Yes. Yes, because 2010 it was a very nice vintage. It was one of the best vintages in the last 20. What we try to do is just to make the more perfection it is possible for maturation of the grape, and this is a variety that the maturation it is very late maturation variety. We arrived to the end of October, usually the last 10 days of October for picking. And in Italy, it's very, very late.
So the end of October is basically another couple of months from now.
Yeah.
So that means a lot of enzymatic reactions that are going to take place in the berries. It means that aren't you afraid of what's going to happen in the climate, or maybe not? Like Sangiovese is a thin skin variety, so if it rains, the berries will burst. Sagrantino is thicker. So is that one of the reasons maybe why nobody here seems to be that afraid about keeping the berries still under the weather?
Yeah, we take two types of risks because we try to do very good maturation of the grape, and for this reason it's one of the first risks. And also we are because you have to wait a long time, and the weather can change every time in October. And also we are an organic winery.
Yeah.
We start to the conversation from the to the organic from the 2010.
Yeah.
We started. And yes, it's not really easy if you have an October rainy or a September rainy. It's possible that you can lose lots of your crop. But we try to do the best if it is possible.
Okay, Brave Winemakers price now. What is the price of your wine in the shelves in the USA?
It's possible to find this bottle at price between 34 to 35.
34, 35, so very competitive price there in the market. What a name of an importer maybe? Do you want to give?
One importer is Palm Bay. It's located in Port Washington, New York.
Okay, so thank you very much for now. I would like to finish off the tour of our winemakers, so to leave a few minutes to you people to ask questions to all the winemakers. We're gonna go to Alessandro Perticaia with the 2011 vintage. But Alessandro, before you start talking about Perticaia, question: how has the climate change affected the grape growing? Is one of our guests asking.
Of course.
Here in Montefalco, of course.
Of course.
the effect of the climate changing in the production of grape, not only for the Sagrantino, is very strong. Especially for us, for the young generation, we are trying to reinvent a new agriculture. Of course, when I ask to my
young generation, what vintage are you?
My first vintage was the 2008, so
well.
I didn't do already 10 vintages. But of course, if I ask to my parents or to the old people in the past, at the normal season was much more easy. So the winter was winter and the summer was summer. Now everything is changing.
What would you say is the biggest challenge in Montefalco for Sagrantino?
The biggest challenge for the Sagrantino is try to work very hard in the vineyards.
Okay.
So focus in the vineyards and not in the cellar, because especially for a grape like this that we have to wait the end of October, first week of November, could be really dangerous to leave the grapes in the in the vineyard so long, reducing the risk of humidity and any kind of problems in this.
Mildew is mildew one of the biggest threats for Sagrantino? Would you say?
Could be yes, but the botrytis. Yes, of course, in that period. We have maybe to be careful in the period of the pruning, because actually we have now very long winter. Consider that we had a frost this year, the 26th of April, and it's very difficult to make an agriculture like this and arrive so late without have vegetation, especially on the valley. The challenge is to try to grow the Sagrantino only in the best places in the area, and maybe do the pruning a little bit later. Try to arrive to the pruning a little bit later to reduce the risk of frost for the beginning of the spring.
Okay.
And then live year by year and to see what is happening. Of course, we pray a lot. We have a lot of saint. We have a lot of saint in Umbria that maybe can help us.
Well, this is a very modest way to say we pray a lot. You work a lot. I know. Actually, Perticaia is a relatively small winery because is it 15 hectares, 7 are Sagrantino, right?
Yes, exactly.
And once again, in the glass. From Alessandro, from Perticaia to the glass. It once again, when I opened the wine, you remember I said maybe there is a little bit of that tropical thingy going on. Maybe for the vintage, the 11 has been really generous, ripe. But we were saying, yes, 11 was really hot. So alcohol, the risk of generating over-mature grapes and aromatics. But then what happens as of the whole month of September through October, you manage, seems here in the glass right now, to retain perfumes. Even a floral touch to the wine that wouldn't really necessarily connect this kind of nose to a bloody hot vintage, right?
Yes, exactly. So we were discussing on the social media too about this floral note that, of course, if you make the 2011 as a warm vintage, it's not easy to image a Sagrantino like this. But what's happened is that actually it's not easy to image a single vintage for both the wine that we produce, the Rosso and the Sagrantino, because the period of picking is very long. We start in the beginning of September with some varieties and we finish at the end of October with the Sagrantino, and everything can change, of course. In a very warm vintage, if you start to have 2-3 weeks with cold temperature, with a very big exchange between the day and the night, or some rain, everything can change, not only in terms of alcohol, but in terms of maturation of the polyphenols, flavors, and taste, of course. And this is the result. 2011, especially in the nose, is the wine that you don't expect, because it's very, very fresh. Maybe fresh is
I agree.
The perfect word. So this
beautiful floral note, balsamic note that help us to enjoy better the Sagrantino that sometimes in vintage is very warm, could be a little bit more difficult to understand. In vintages like this, I speak about Perticaia, of course, but for us, we are very happy for this kind of vintage.
And I was saying before, I have a few questions coming from you. It would be nice to have the names so I can direct the answer. I have a couple of questions. One, maybe I can ask Daniele because it's about the organic wineries. How many? Do you know how many are in Montefalco? How many organic wineries?
In the last few years, lots of wineries start to make organic cultivation, organic agriculture. For sure, I think at the moment we and Antonelli.
Two wineries.
Tasting
yeah.
In the Montefalco.
So roughly, actually, there is 5 organic wineries. Okay. We talked about price with you. I'd like Alessandro to wrap up his presentation, giving us your retail price and maybe a name of 2 of your importers.
Yes. Okay. Price on the shelf is about $55. And the name of some of our importers for New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut is Artisan Wine. For Florida is Tita. California, Lira Wines.
Okay, thank you very much. Delphine V is asking, we are just waiting that you talk about the old vintages and aging potential. Well, I'm actually very fond of this topic. Of course, winemakers are always happy to sell what's in the cellar right now and not what was in the cellar. But interesting enough, a lot of these winemakers are themselves very interested in exploring the potential of Sagrantino di Montefalco. And starting from kind of 5-6 years ago, I started off a little research going into the cellars of these winemakers, barging in the cellars, getting some of the old vintages, tortured like some of their wines. Even tonight, I've asked them, like, can you bring along some older vintage for dinner? And so they did. Thank you very much, actually, to everyone for accepting my request, because it's always nice to do a check. State of the art of an appellation. This is our job, to see how the winemakers are moving on and how their growth is connected to their heritage. And Sagrantino can age really well. There is no doubt about it. As a matter of fact, most of the bottles that I opened, even some of the old stuff from the 1990s, I didn't have any problems with the bottles. Occasionally I had the bottle that was maybe a little stuck, a little not very opened. It remained like a little baby with not much of an evolution. But in general terms, Sagrantino seems to be like a super never-ending wine. And I do believe, but this is my personal point of view, that if you manage, at these prices that you've been just hearing, if you manage just to put in your cellar, you buy 12, you drink 2, 3 now, you see how it goes. This is how we buy wines, right? You don't buy 1 bottle, you buy 12 bottles, you drink 1 now, 2 for Christmas, and they see our development, and you just hide away 6 bottles, and just make believe that you don't have them anymore. And in 10, 15 years time, you'll be having for what, $34, $40, an immense value for money in your cellar. This is my point of view. I would actually count a lot on it, and the wine would taste way more expensive than it is. Delphine, my point of view, Filippo Antonelli, because time is against us. Wine, Sagrantino, extraction practices, use of any new oak. I know that we have to talk about Passito with you. And maybe somebody else would like to chip in. So I'm going to ask you the question about the extraction in Sagrantino, because it's super massive. It's like a Michelangelo prisoner, right? With all the marble that is surrounding the statue, and it's trying to get rid of all the matter. So is extraction, what do you do to tame some of that matter, even actually in the passito. Maybe you can start from the passito. Is there a different practice that you do?
Well, in the passito, we do a shorter skin contact normally. But
How short?
No more than 7-8 days normally. In the dry one, we do a very longer skin contact. Anyway, what we do, Sagrantino is a grape variety with the highest contents in polyphenols and tannins, and they are mostly coming from the skins, not from the seeds. So they are immediately released in the first days, in 4 or 5 days, the first 4 or 5 days of maceration, they are already released. So there are not so many ways not to extract them. The point is that they must be ripe, the grapes must come from a very nice vineyard, maybe an old vineyard. So this is the point to do a good job in the vineyard. And then we do not add, this is personal for us.
Of course.
We use large barrels, so we don't use barrique. So we add less tannins than using small barrels.
Large barrels, do you use Slavonian oak or French oak?
We use French, but now also Austrian and German oak.
Okay, so you're experimenting all the times.
Different oaks.
So interesting. Filippo Antonelli from the Antonelli Winery has been telling us that it's mainly the skin, the paramount factor with the extraction in Sagrantino, rather than the seeds of the grapes. About your wine that you brought today, it's the only passito we have. It's a 2009 vintage. Retail price?
Retail price is about $45-50.
$45-50.
The half bottle.
For the half a bottle, of course, because
they half juice. So
the productive ratio is much less. So how do you make it sweet?
We harvest, we do a selection of the best grapes, and then we harvest, and they must be perfectly safe, no botrytis.
Yep.
And then we leave to get dry or some kind of racks, and for about 2 months.
So you lay them flat on the...
Yeah, flat.
Yeah.
Like the same way they do the Valpolicella, the Amarone, or the Recioto in Valpolicella, for about 2 months and a half, and then before Christmas we do the crushing of the grapes.
Yep.
At that point the concentration of the juice is very high because the process goes quite fast, and the potential alcohol when we harvest Sagrantino is much higher than in Valpolicella, for instance. So at that point the juice is very concentrated. The natural yeast, they start to transform sugar in alcohol. When they arrive at 14.5, they get drunk themselves and cannot transform anymore sugar in alcohol. So we have about 100 grams per liter of unfermented sugar. And that's what we do.
So we're hearing from, grazie Filippo, we're hearing, looks like you could do this for a living. Your talk was sounding like you were a winemaker. Thank you, very clear, very to the point, everybody here, guys. I love this wine. By the way, I had a question in mind, which was temperature. Because my glass, it's kind of below room temperature, but it's still good, the wine. I mean, there's almost no alcoholic perception in the mouth, which always it's a sign of harmony. The sweetness is there, but it's not, like making your teeth falling. So there's good acidity there, and the tannic presence is there. What is the temperature you should serve a wine like this?
To me, Passito a little bit cooler than the regular Sagrantino, so a couple of degrees less, so between 14 and 16, I would say.
Centigrade, yes.
Centigrade, yeah, for sure. I do not know Fahrenheit, how much is it?
It's always the translation in Fahrenheit always make my mind spin. So we have another few minutes and some more questions. Thank you, Maruska. Here for me. If I miss any of the winemakers or if any of you guys and ladies have something to say about maybe what a colleague of yours has said and you want to join in, please do. How much Passito is made in Montefalco, Filippo?
How much? Not so much.
5%, would you say? 10%? Maybe 5%?
Compared to the dry Sagrantino, I would say yes, a bit, 5% maybe.
So roughly, what is it, like 1 million bottles of Sagrantino a year?
A little bit more.
A bit more than that?
1.3, 1.5.
So 1.3 bottles of Sagrantino, 1.3 million bottles of Sagrantino each year. And how many winemakers is in Montefalco right now?
About 70s, I believe.
70 winemakers, a little more Gianpaolo is saying?
No, that's too much.
Okay. 1.3 million bottles. And what is the hectares? How many hectares is actually Sagrantino di Montefalco? 700 hectares of Sagrantino is released in the area. And what is your, well, so the answer, the question here now is, what is the oldest vintage that you still have in the cellar? 2003 for Terre della Custodia. Maruska had a message for me in the meanwhile. 2000. 79 with 79 is the first year of the appellation, actually. Thank you, Filippo, for the other this information. I know we were talking about Marco Caprai earlier on. I had some of the 1990 with Marco. Okay.
Okay. So
1979, you're saying?
The oldest vintage of, like Filippo said, the oldest vintage of Sagrantino according to the appellation.
Liu, what you guys have in the cellar?
We have the wines from the 80s, but we had earthquake, so you know the drinkable wine start from the 90s.
1990s.
97, 8.
1978. Yes. So, and with Gianpaolo, of course, thank you very much, because you brought us the 96, which is your first vintage, right?
No, forget it. My first personal vintage with the neck label, everything well done, was 1999. Of course, then there are previous vintages, but doesn't count.
Doesn't count
because there isn't.
Okay. You guys, what do you have? Do you have anything in the cellar that is available actually in the market, of course?
1998.
98,
yeah.
Okay. We've been trying with you your 96.
1994, first vintage ever.
Okay. Now, there's a question about matching food and wine. Somebody has touched base on that. What do you do with Sagrantino and with the Rosso? Of course, very different wines. Even in the same vintage, we were saying, 2014, you have a Rosso one style and a Sagrantino the other style. The Rossos are wines to begin a meal, to go with cold cuts, to start off maybe with a pasta dish with some tomato sauce, to go with the acidity of the tomato. You need that kind of acidity as well. You can move on towards even some really quick, you know, like if you have a meat that you don't really cook for too long, like a few minutes, the roast I think is going to be really delicious. Of course, Sagrantino, it's a world of its own. We talked about the tannic structure, so whenever there is tannins, you have to have proteins. So if you like to eat meat, you know, any lamb, today I tried the coratella, so you can go for like sweetbreads, or you can go for big stews, of course, like longer meats that you cook a little longer. So rich in sauce as well. Sagrantino doesn't fear anything. But I have to be honest, I wouldn't want to get into the position of going into the idea of these big monsters that needs the buffalo to be drunk, right? I mean, the wines that we had tonight do not have some of maybe of the other vintages. I can see that there is a more elegance. Somehow, I go back to one of the questions that you guys raised. The winemakers, I have the feeling, I managed to handle the tannic presence of Sagrantino really well, delivering sweeter fruit at the end, so you have the structure of tannins in your mouth to begin with, but then you have the juice and the sweetness that melts down. So I think of course, if there is vegetarians, as there are vegetarians out there, for me, one of the best matching would be the aubergine, mozzarella, parmigiana. I think it's one of the greatest. A little bit smoked mozzarella would be awesome. It's true that Antonelli Passito settles in fiberglass leaned cement vats? Question for you. Food, wine, chicken. Filippo.
All our wines before being bottled, the rest in cement vats, the old cement vats. Yes.
Okay. So the cement vats actually is, in Italy, a lot of winemakers used to have the cement vats, as you know, for many reasons. One of the main reasons is that temperature doesn't change, decanting is really easy. But then the arrival of steel, a lot of winemakers just really basically broke the cement vats, and nowadays they want to get them back in the market, but there is not that many producers of cement vats. This is a bit of a funny business, but here we go. If you, I'm going to ask a question to the winemakers. Is there anything that you want to add in, or something that we missed? Prices, we said everything. So I think on our side, please ask us any questions to wrap this up. I was about to do something for you that is a little naughty, but I was hiding the last matching food and wine. So with the Sagrantino Passito, of course, you can go for a great dessert because there is enough sugar residual to match, of course, a dish that is built on an excessive amount of sugar, and you need a wine that is all on the other side of the sugar. I have another question from Maruska that I'm about to read to everybody. From Normal Wine, seems like they should be starting libraries for these wines. No? Yes. Somebody wants to pick on this? Somebody's saying dovreste cominciare ad avere una libreria, un archivio. Tengo io.
Okay, so regarding this, I think all the winery has some library about old vintages. We will start this year for the first time.
Good.
To exit in the market with a Sagrantino 10 years old that will be available in the States, in New York, I think for Christmas. It's a new way to educate people that the Sagrantino is a wine that can age. So don't stop only in the glass that you are drinking now, but try to image it in the future. This is very important for the people.
Thank you, Alessandro. I'm going to go the other side as well, just to hear, because I was actually seeing with Liu that you were trying to get your wine, right, across with some older vintages. So you do have a little bit of a library at home as well, right?
Yes, yes. We have for the public at the winery vintages since 2004.
So 2004.
5, 6, 7 till 2010 is our last vintage, current vintage.
Current vintage, okay.
Of Sagrantino, of course.
Of course. Eleonora, is Arnaldo Caprai Winery thinking the same? Do you have any older vintages that you are going to be releasing in the market?
Yes, of course. We still available some of the 03, 04 and 05. And for sure we are organizing very often a lot of vertical tasting just to educate the people and let the people understand the potential of this great wine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said before, this wine for sure is for beautiful pairing with meat, whatever, but it is at the same time a wine ready to drink. So 2010, 2011 Sagrantino is ready to drink too. So that's the style of the wine.
Yeah,
that's the main idea.
I don't know if the public over there, guys in the US, agree with this, but I have the feeling in the last few vintages, Sagrantino has moved on to become a more accessible wine immediately when young. More questions. Thank you, guys. I see you like this, and we are very happy. I feel the Passito would be better with salty. Anyone with me? Normal wine. I'm with you. When should we crack open a bottle and drink something salty? Of course, like cheese. cheese would be a perfect match for it, and it's a classic. It's a very luscious way, easy way. You just got your cheese and then open the wine. You don't need to do any cooking, and life is sweet and salty all of a sudden. I think I wanted to. What else? Right now, the breeze here is coming. The fall is coming, so the days are still really hot. Days are still really summer, 30 degrees, so full maturation out there in the vineyard. And then night, though, you need a little jumper to get out because the fall is coming. Today we saw some rain. And some?
Storm.
A little storm. But you see, I see you guys are like, there's no fear. There's no fear of the arrival of anything, because Sagrantino can cope with everything. I think, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, guys, ladies and gentlemen, winemakers here. We'll see you in Montefalco, of course, guys. You gotta come over. You gotta come over here to see this beautiful land that was painted by the most famous artist. I'm going to mention one, the Benozzo Gozzoli cycle of frescoes about the life of San Francesco here in Montefalco is really beautiful to see, whether you are an art lover or not, whether you are a wine lover or not. Montefalco is for the winemakers that live here, is normal to be surrounded by these beautiful white, light brown stones, but it feels like it's you are in a cartoon village, but instead it's all real. This is a village that has been here now for over 1,000 years, and it's a vibrant little city, lots of little restaurants where you can eat, and very welcoming. So tourism hasn't reached the mass factor, so you come to Umbria and you always have welcoming people and of course great wines, awesome food. I'm sure the winemakers here will be happy to have you in their cellars. Thank you very much, arrivederci e buonasera a tutti, grazie. Salute. Cheers guys, salute a tutti.